There's a chess match going on in this game between Cheeto and
Yes.
Amari Cooper, the former teammates there in Dallas. They're going to be playing against each other. It's interesting, right? Because you look at the Browns wide receiver room. I think it's the lowest it's ever ranked in the preseason since they traded for Jarvis Landry. But it's probably the best I've felt about it in a very since Josh Gordon, because Amari Cooper has been a consistent contributor. And Donovan Peoples-Jones, I have not peeped that he is on a good track this year. I mean, he has a good amount of yards. I think he has 400 yards so far this season. He's on track to get about 900. Same thing with Coop. Coop's probably on track for 1K. You know, the production has been better out the wide receiving position. So it's game week, it's Bengals week, and you know who I'm bringing on to talk Bengals. It's the guy from AFC North Talk, also the Cincinnati podcast. Don't follow him on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at Quinn_C. We are currently doing a hot chip challenge for AFC North Talk. First one to 10,000 followers on Twitter obviously gets spared from eating the one hot chip. So
Definitely.
please make sure I don't have to eat the chip and have
Baker
Ace.
Bros, I need you. Baker Bros, I need you at New Stripe City.
Oh, they already got you, right? Like, no, that they one last hope, right, of getting some joy in this season, because they're like, maybe Baker can play next week, and and it could be just like old times. But Baker is not here. It's a different set of it's a different quarterback, but I feel like the key players are still the same here for both teams. It's interesting, right? Because there has been this whole meme about Cincinnati and Baker Mayfield's record over the Bengals. But when you look at this team this year, the Browns, they're a better offense than they were last year. But Cincinnati, I mean, they look better than they were last year. Now, the Jamar Chase news kind of puts a whole wrench in everybody's season. Hopefully he gets back from that hip injury fine, but he is on IR, so he's out at least 4 games. How are Bengal fans feeling about this game and this matchup, given the history that they've had against these matchups?
I think Bengals fans, if you're looking at this one, based on the road that the Bengals are on right now, you probably are feeling confident. The Jamar Chase news probably takes some air out of your sails, right? Because this was a Bengals team that really struggled to find themselves early on, adjusting with a new offensive line and all of that. So I think Bengals fans heading into the game were a little bit more confident than they were in previous years. And I think it's also due to the fact of where the Browns are coming in at, right? Because I feel like if the Browns were coming in with a record where we both know if they would have won some of those games, you talk about the Falcons, the Jets games, some of those things. I think there's a totally different feeling from that. But the fact that you've seen Jacoby Brissett kind of have some issues in some of those games and seeing some things where you're like, okay, it kind of gave you a little bit of confidence. But I think at the end of the day, Bengals fans were looking at this like we can't go 0-3 in the division, especially going into this game. But you damn sure better find a way to stop Nick Chubb, because that's going to be a major key to this game. So I think in this situation, it's like, man, this is a team that has our number. We do feel like we're kind of trending at the right time. But now it's still like, don't sleep on them, because they will catch you slipping. And it seems like every time we play y'all, bro, it's always like a desperation game or a game where you guys have a must win against us. And so I think a lot of Bengals fans are just hoping that we come and take care of business. But we are I think, aware that this is a team that has beaten us in the past.
Yeah, and we make the jokes about the Baker Mayfield stuff, but I think what's seriously been the problem for Cincinnati is Nick Chubb and then Myles Garrett, right? Like those two players specifically. The secondary has been strong, but that really was last year where that really showed up. What do you think is Lou Anarumu? What's his plan for Nick Chubb? Given he's tried stuff that has not worked before. What do you think he's going to do to approach this thing a little bit differently?
Man, that's a good question. Lou likes to mix up a lot of stuff. To be honest, I've been so focused on them figuring out cover two from the offensive side. I haven't really looked at what Lou has done. But Lou has always been like a creative kind of person. But I think in this situation, Lou is going to do similar to what he did last week in terms of making sure that the defense focuses on stopping the run. I think that that's going to be the primary thing. You're never going to stop a Nick Chubb. You just got to hope to try to contain him. I think that they did some good things last week, especially in response to things that they had struggled with against New Orleans. In that New Orleans game, they really struggled setting the edge and trying to keep those runs from getting around to those corners and things like that. So I did see him make some adjustments in that instance last week. I'm not sure where the Browns really like do those runs, whether they're inside or if they're off tackle or if they try to bounce to the outside. But I think that you will see Lou try to definitely put them in situations to try to at least slow down that running attack. I think from a other standpoint, you might see a lot of zone. We usually run a ton of zone. You're not going to really see too much man unless it's Cheeto. And then he's also brought in Cam Taylor-Britt at the corner position. That's something where we want to see what he does there. Other things that he's done, Joseph Asai, you've heard me talk about probably ad nauseum. They were doing some things before last week with kind of putting him at three tech, which really wasn't working. And they switched back to really just using him primarily as an edge rusher last week. I think you'll see more of that. Sometimes he does three safety looks, not really. I don't see him doing a three safety look in this game. I probably would see him probably running mostly a little bit of nickel with the two nickel linebackers. You might see three at some points because he knows kind of how the running teams are going to come at it. You're probably going to see heavier packages with a lot of defensive linemen, big tackles, and stuff like that. Sometimes he may even put like two nose tackles on the line at a time with a team that he knows is going to run. But with Lou, you're going to get a lot of things where he's going to try to confuse quarterbacks. Like that's kind of his thing. Sometimes he may show like he's blitzing, and then those guys drop back in the zone hoping to get an interception. So you'll get a lot from Lou Anarumo from this game. The biggest thing that a lot of people really give him props for are the second half adjustments. Like usually when he comes out in the second half, he really confuses a lot of teams with what he does defensively. Even though he might have shown you a look in the first half, he might completely switch that in the second half. But it starts with Nick Chubb, and I think that he also wants to try to get Jacoby Brissett in situations where he can show him one look, throw another, and hope that his defense can try to get a turnover. And the other thing that he's good at doing is trying to get teams off of the field on third down. That's one of the things that he really focuses on is trying to get teams into, third and medium, third and long, and getting that defense off of the field.
Now, there's a chess match going on in this game between Cheeto and Amari Cooper, the former teammates there in Dallas. They're going to be playing against each other. It's interesting, right? Because you look at the Browns wide receiver room. I think it's the lowest it's ever ranked in the preseason since they traded for Jarvis Landry. But it's probably the best I've felt about it in a very since Josh Gordon, because Amari Cooper has been a consistent contributor. And Donovan Peoples-Jones, I have not peeped that he is on a good track this year. I mean, he has a good amount of yards. I think he has 400 yards so far this season. He's on track to get about 900. Same thing with Coop. Coop's probably on track for 1K. The production has been better out the wide receiving position. Part of that has to do with the change at quarterback, and we ain't even did the big change yet. So we'll see what happens when the big change happens. But it's interesting this week because for whatever reason, Baker Mayfield did just play lights out against Cincinnati. It's like one of those unexplained mysteries. Like he just turned into somebody he wasn't against them. Jacoby Brissett, who I feel like has been playing better than 2021 Baker, and better than 2019 Baker, but not necessarily any Baker that was any semblance of a playmaker there. With him being a more experienced quarterback, you talked about Lou trying to kind of throw him off. Do you think his job's going to be a bit harder than it was where Baker was a third, fourth year quarterback? Jacoby has been in every offense and literally seen every look at this point of his career because he's technically an old guy. He's almost 30, right? And that's old in the NFL now. But you know, is that going to be something that could be a surprising thing that pops up for him, or do you expect him to play better against Jacoby Brissett purely because it made no sense for Baker to be this good against the Bengals? So like, it's probably got to come back around at some point.
Lou, I mean, so Lou, sometimes majority of the times, and I'll say recently, he's looked like a genius, but he has had some of those head scratching moments, like even in the Falcons game, you know, cover one free before halftime. Like, what were you thinking? Or cover zero, the infamous cover zero that he ran against you guys. Now,
what's his beef with safeties? Like, he got a beef with safeties. So sometimes.
One thing that I will say to shed light on that, because I know a couple people that were close to Lou around that time, that was a point where Lou had kind of went to the front office, and this was like 2020 when he first got there, and he was like, "Look, dog, these players ain't it. Like, they don't fit my system. Y'all think William Jackson is something. He's really not this. Y'all think Geno Atkins, well, I'm not going to say Geno. He didn't say Geno, but y'all think Carlos Dunlap is this. He's really not that. Like, dog, I need different players." And he kind of sabotaged them in a way, dog. So, like, in that cover zero, like, since the Bengals were like, nah, William Jackson's a top flight corner, we really trust this guy. He was like, all right, let's put him on an island by himself then, and let's see if he holds up in that sort of way.
He did the old, let's see. You think you go? All right, let's see. Put
a one-on-one on Kevin Durant. From Baker in that game at all. Like, I don't want to say like that's why Baker. Like, I'm not trying to say that at all. But there was something to that first game. I think the game last year that Baker had, that was just all against Lou. So I think, could Jacoby Brissett have some success? Sure, I definitely think so. Because Lou does, depending on the game plan, kind of get stubborn with his game plan, and sometimes he doesn't adjust or abandon it, right? So, yeah, if he catches him slipping and it's something where he just decides to kind of be arrogant, yeah, I think Jacoby could catch him slipping. But I think this year's Lou compared to, I think ever since he really went against Pat Mahomes, like week 17, he's really been pretty spot on with the defense. And so I think he kind of learned something from those adjustments. And ever since then, he's kind of riding this streak. So I wouldn't depend on it because Lou can really confuse like some of the best of them. But to your point, though, Jacoby has seen a lot. So we'll just have to see what the chess match ends up like.
It'd be real tempting for him not to try to go to cover one this week. You know what I mean? Like, for him to like fight against it because, boy, the Browns a cover one team, right? Like, if there's a team you want to play cover one against and dare to throw the ball, the Ravens zero blitzed us once at the end of that game on 3rd and 2 with 2 minutes left. They had nobody past 5 yards of the ball at the beginning of their alignment. That's how hard they were zero blitzing us. And
that's wild.
They called the OPI, but I'm gonna let last week go. But yeah, let's flip field here and talk about this Bengals offense now without Jamar Chase against this Browns defense, without Denzel Ward, who he's been in concussion protocol for 3 weeks. I'm starting to worry if his career is going to continue at this point. And this is an interesting matchup, and it's kind of unfortunate, right? Like, none of this went the way we thought it would. We thought it was going to be the Migos versus the Browns, and like we was going to be able to get this little rematch going on Monday Night Football, but Quavo ain't there. You know what I mean? Like, we ain't got whoever. If this is New Edition, we ain't got Bobby Brown out there. We just got Ralph out there running it. You know what I mean? So it's not the versus matchup we thought this would be on Monday night. Now we're looking at a situation where, and my biggest concern for this game was like, okay, look, if Denzel not going to play, MJ, I like MJ a lot. He's really good physical, but he can't be on a dude like Jamar. Jamar would eat his lunch, right? Because Jamar real quick and fast. You got to keep MJ off of him. Now, if I'm the Browns, I'm like, okay, this is much better for us because Tyler Boyd is a really good receiver, but I think MJ is good at that kind of coverage right there with the bigger guy. They're both bigger, more physical receivers. I think he'll be fine there. And then you have a T. Higgins who's still like, top 15 at the very least when it comes to wide receivers. He's really
Right.
good, but I think Greg Newsome's good. But we were talking about this on the show. People think that they wanted revenge. The Vigos wanted revenge on Denzel Ward.
Mhm.
From everything I know, it's really 20 that they're after Greg Newsome. Like they got the they respect Denzel Ward. That's why his name popped up. But
Right.
if you listen to that clip again, there's somebody they're like not gonna give any props to. That's Greg Newsome. And what do you expect from this offense, just from the secondary versus the wide receiver standpoint? Now with both teams out, their marquee players in these matchups.
So one of the guys that you probably heard Bengals fans talk about, me talk about, Ravens fans talk about, Hayden Hurst. I think he already kind of carved out kind of a niche role, but they really just haven't been able to get him more targets because those targets have had to go to the Migos and Joe Mixon, even in like the Russian dump off game, right? But I think that this is going to be something that helps him out because I think him and Tyler Boyd kind of feed off of each other, being that they play over the middle. So, like, if you are going to guard Tyler Boyd, that usually opens him up in like a weird way, like similar to how it would Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, just on the inside level versus the outside. You're still going to see them go to T. Higgins. I think you'll see a lot of what the Bengals did really in 2020, like Joe Burrow's rookie year, before there was a Jamar Chase, when you had kind of a AJ Green that was past his prime. You had T. Higgins, who technically was receiver number one, even though people didn't want to admit it because it was that early. But yeah, he was pretty much receiver number one. Then you had Tyler Boyd. I think you'll see something similar there. But the one thing I think with Jamar Chase being out, and Bengals fans have talked about this as well. Even before Jamar got hurt, we were like, dog, we need a fourth receiver because Mike Thomas is not cutting it. Like anything after that, like Stanley Morgan is a blocker. I'm not going to try to act like Stanley Morgan does anything other than block, even though he's a receiver. I think that they might actually lean on the run game a lot more. You might see more Chris Evans. I know I've been talking about Chris Evans forever. They have shown Chris Evans line up in looks in the empty at the wide receiver position. You might get more of that even more now because before it was like maybe 6 snaps a game or something like that. You would see him. That may get a little bit of an uptick just because they don't really have like Mitchell Wilcox is a second tight end and he's really a blocker too. So like they really kind of have limited weapons in the pass game once you get past the big three now, which is Higgins, Hayden Hurst, and Tyler Boyd. Then you get into the Joe Mixon. Then you get into some of those other guys. So I really think that they actually will have to run the ball, even though they don't like to run the ball. And they've been doing a lot of RPO stuff. But I think that they'll start to have to lean on Joe Mixon a lot more in the running game and in the receiving game as well. And another person that they do that with as well, way more than Chris Evans, is Samaje Perine. Like they love throwing him in on those passing downs because honestly, he's just a better blocker than Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon, love him. I love the way he runs. I like how he, catches the ball out of the backfield. The one thing I will say though, the one thing Joe Mixon has struggled with, pass blocking. That is why they take Joe Mixon off the field on third down, dog, because he is not a great pass blocker. And that's why you always see Samaje Perine in there. It's kind of like, I'm not going to say AP because they're two different kind of players, but remember they would take Adrian Peterson off of the field on third down, dog. You
They
get a
do
lot
that
of
with
that
Nick Chubb, and people
with
act
Joe
like,
Mixon.
yeah, because Nick Chubb got the same issue. He can't really block. You know what I mean? But it's always interesting when somebody has that deficiency because you can't live with it, right? But people get mad because you took Adrian Peterson off the field. It's like, understand, he's a 60 overall when we ask him to do this, though. Like, we got to get him off the field. But you brought up something, the pass protection, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's the biggest question for this Bengals offense, right? Because if Joe gets time, if he's able to beat Joe Cool, he's probably going to put up a good amount of points. He's probably going to be able to get up early. They're probably going to get up out of there with the W. But the game wrecker, and, I feel like you guys have reasonable confidence in La'el Collins on Clowney. Mm-hmm. But the matchup problem has always been, for whatever reason, Jonah Williams, who's a good tackle,
right,
just doesn't necessarily have the greatest of games versus Myles Garrett. And Myles does that to some people, right? Because he's just so freakishly athletic. What do you think Do you think they change anything in their approach to try to stop Miles, or do you think they just go, "Hey, man, if he beats us, he beats us," kind of a deal?
Look, man, because I've been ever since we started AFC North Talk, I've been watching we all been watching every one of our games, right? So once I saw other teams like, look, I'm a triple team Miles Garrett. I'm just like, dog, why aren't we doing that? Like, why aren't we at least throwing a chipper on there? Like, yeah, let's not play any games. I'm gonna be real. Like a lot of Bengals fans don't really criticize Jonah, I think, to the level that I have, because like I've definitely had my fair share of criticisms on Jonah, to the point where some people have called me a Jonah hater. I don't know why. But Jonah has struggled a lot, I think, this season, especially on the offensive line. Like he's given up a decent amount of those sacks. He's bounced back here and there. The one thing that gives me some confidence and some insight, because you got to watch Joe. He's not going to give you too much. But on the Volume podcast with Colin Cowherd, he did say, like, when we go up against these elite edge rushers, we need to chip them, not just allow these guys to play one-on-one. And so I think, if it were me, if I'm reading in between the lines, I think Joe definitely, that's the other thing. He has respect for guys that are elite players. So best believe he respects the hell out of Myles Garrett. But I think the other thing is there's a lot of communication between him and the line, especially when they're in empty. I think you see Joe probably say, "Hey, let's get somebody to help chip Myles Garrett on certain plays." But like you said, Myles is going to move around. I'll say this though, like even though La'el Collins was a great signing for us and everything, dude is playing hurt, bro. Like he's got a back injury, and that's really kind of had him look questionable at some points. So I don't know if I'm going to get, from a consistency standpoint, the hobble La'el that I kind of saw where Michael Parsons was able to make a move on him and he couldn't recover, or if I'm going to get the one that I just saw 2 weeks ago against the Saints where he shut down Cam Hayward. I mean, not Cam Hayward. What's the dude's name?
Cam Jordan.
Cam Jordan. Okay, yeah, Cam Jordan. And he was talking spicy with that. So I would probably say Myles Garrett, the game record. I don't trust him with Jonah Williams, even with a chip, dog. But they better bring that chip no matter what.
So you say Lyle got a bad back? Well, that sounds like a bull rush for me. But yeah, I think that's one of the most intriguing things is like, because Miles is still banged up from the car accident, but he just had 2 sacks. He was
going crazy. He almost had 3, didn't he?
Yeah, he had himself a game. I think he had like 8 pressures, something like that, something crazy. He had a couple tackles for losses.
Trying to tell them, dog, because I was like, look, I made the mistake of doubting Myles Garrett one time. We did that. I think we did that edge room ranking, and this was before y'all had Jadeveon. And I was like, oh, you know what? The Bengals got Dunlap, Hubbard, and Carl Lawson together. I'm taking that 3 to that 1. Dog, that same year, Myles Garrett ended up with more sacks than all 3 of them put together. We had traded Carlos and everything. That man still had more sacks than all 3 of those dudes combined. I was like, yeah, dog, I'm never doubting Myles Garrett ever again.
If you ever want to know how good Myles Garrett is, he went number 1 overall in a draft that had Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, and nobody says anything about that. Nobody ever met. That's how you know Akeem Olajuwon's cool, when you go number 1 and Michael Jordan goes number 3, and nobody's like, man, Houston messed it up. Like, nope. Like he is the Akeem Olajuwon to Pat Mahomes is Michael Jordan. Like, he went number 1, and people are like, well, you got to do it. Like, if Pat Mahomes was there,
when you see that redraft, it's still Myles Garrett at number 1.
Yeah, shout out Sam Bowie, aka Mitchell Trubisky. Yeah, it's just you got to do it. You gonna pass up on Miles? And I know it's hard to appreciate it when you see it every day, because like, to Browns fans, he's been like this since 2017. So we're like, oh yeah, we're used to seeing edges, but once you see like an edge is not Miles out there, you're like, oh, they don't all just like bend like that, like. And then you start to realize why people ain't saying nothing about Pat Mahomes not going number 1 in that draft, even in the redrafts. That's crazy. But yeah, he's really good. Nick Chubb really good. I mean, like, still gonna be a matchup of some really good players on national TV. Hopefully, this can be entertaining. It's a Browns game, brother. Hey, and I'm just gonna say it right here. Every single one of our games, except for the Patriots one, been like this. Clinch butt cheek season. So it's gonna be tight at the end of this game, man. We're gonna be stressing, sweating, all that. But if you want to hear more from Ace, make sure you follow us on AFC North Talk. Follow him on Twitter at New Stripe City. Also, but follow me first at Quincy, you know what I mean? But then follow Ace. But follow, I don't know. I'm down like 100 right now. You know what I mean? I should start being selfish and get the ball, but I'm gonna be a team player. Also follow him at the Winston-Natty Podcast. Follow the Winston-Natty Podcast on Twitter. They're also on YouTube, Spotify, everywhere podcasts are available. They are at anything I miss, Ace.
Nah, man, I appreciate you having me on, and y'all definitely got to support this brother, man. He is the best at what he does, so definitely be sure to follow him on Twitter, subscribe. If you're a Cleveland fan and you watching this and you haven't subscribed, what is wrong with you, bro? I know, what is wrong with you?
And you see Ace had these nice things to say. He said, I'm good at, don't y'all want me to exist after this 10K challenge? If I eat that one hot chip challenge, I got a bad heart. I could die. So, make sure you follow me on Twitter so we can keep this content going. You know what I mean? Because I don't know if that milk going to work good. But all jokes aside, it's always fun having Ace on. It's always fun playing the Bengals. Next time we play, though, it's going to be a little bit different. The dynamics.
Hopefully that time, bro, we can get – I done tried to raise this whole bill of, hey, the new marquee matchup in the division.
The North keep flopping, man. We keep flopping every year. We like, hey. You know what it feel like? It feel like hyping up not a Wu-Tang album. Was it it's Praz, Lauryn Hill, and Wyclef. What's the group
Fugees?
Called? Yeah, it's like hyping up a Fuji album every year. Hey, bro, it's coming. They about to tour. It's coming, dog. Every year it's like this with the North. We coming. Praz about to be. Praz got better. Album. Yeah,
that J. Cole and Kendrick album that's just we never
always about to come out. Yeah, then we get a Lauryn Hill Unplugged season, which is this year, and it's like, oh, come on, every year, man. We just be looking at it. We thought we was gonna get how many years of Lamar, Joe Burrow, and Deshaun Watson? We might get 6 games where they exist in the same division together, dog. Like. Like, sure. I ain't seen a fall off like this. This division, waiting on this division to reach its potential is like waiting for the old Kanye to come back. This is like, man, come on, dog. Like, I thought you was back. I thought you was back. And then
now you out here at Skechers trying to get a deal.
Man.
Skechers won't even give you a deal.
Skechers saying no. Like, that's how it feels waiting on this division to be good. Like it's supposed to, but we keep swapping places with the NFC East. But that's a wrap for this conversation. I want y'all to have a great day, have a good night, and make sure to keep your head up. Y'all be out.